Hey everyone, so welcome back to the channel. My name is Sam. Today I'm breaking down one of the most powerful and reliable message brokers used in modern distributed system, that is RabbitMQ. As previously we did a theoretical walkthrough through the capabilities and what it can do. So if you're building a microservice, event-driven application, or event pipelines, this video is going to save you weeks of architectural pain. We are going deep into exchanges, routing keys, DLX, retries, priorities, clustering, and full Spring Boot demo. So hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So what is RabbitMQ and what actually does it do? So Rabbit is a highly flexible AMQP based message broker, unlike Kafka, which stores events in a distributed log. RabbitMQ focuses on delivering guarantees, routing intelligence, and messaging reliability. So it supports message TTL, dead letter exchange, routing by topic and headers, priorities, delayed messages, and even stream queues, which give you Kafka-like functionality. So RabbitMQ is ideal for a lot of reasons, which I highlighted in the previous video. You can check it down in the description. We want to do a producer exchange kind of architecture. So we just do producer exchange and queues in this video demo, which will produce a message, then bind it to or send it to an exchange, bind the exchange to the queue, and then have the message in the queue. Then finally we'll do different types of queues and then consume those messages. Also we'll discuss the DLX, retries, TTLs, and stuffs like that in this live demo. So let's get started. So one of the prerequisites that I'll need you to have is a Docker desktop, or rather Docker desktop, which will allow us to run our application in a much containerized fashion. So if also you want to read more or understand more about Docker, let me know in the comments below so that I can do one simple video, 20 minutes video on that. So we'll want to run Rabbit using Docker in here. So right now I have this RabbitMQ, but I'll create another one so that we are all in the same format. So how Docker is done is just a matter of having the Docker compose file, which will create in a bit. So let's just go and I'll open my IDE and let's jump right into it. So I'll come here and open a project. So let me see in a second. So I'll just come here, open a project, and then I'll create one folder here and call it Rabbit setup. And then in here, this is where now I'll go and create my Docker compose file .yaml, and then using that now that's what I'll execute. So here is my RabbitMQ setup page. So in here I'll just create a file. I'll say create a new file, then I'll call it docker compose.yaml. And then out of these now I'll open my terminal in here, and then I'll just try to paste some items, and then I'll say, so we'll start by saying maybe the version of Docker that we want, the version of RabbitMQ that we want to run, and then we'll just say service. So this is basically the YAML way of doing. So there are those indentations that you don't want to miss, and is a way of generating a Docker container which has RabbitMQ running within it. So just say RabbitMQ, and then I'll put it like this. Let me make it a bit bigger. So I'll say RabbitMQ, and then I'll put some inside RabbitMQ. I'll have a dictionary within it. I'll say this is image, so I'll just pick the image from RabbitMQ 3.13 for our test right now. Then I'll say management. Feel free to pick any other version or any other image that's available online. So this one you can pretty just find it easily, and then I'll just bind my ports as a list. So let me see. Let me first do this here. So you really want to be very specific, or rather very careful about the indentation, because this is a YAML file. So I'll just say this port 5672. I'll bind it to, so I'm just binding my ports on my local machine to the ports on Docker 672 Then I'll say also this one, I'll bind it to the same port. Yeah, so this one need to be full, so these are ports. Yeah, so this is my full Docker Compose. Let's try and see if this file of mine will initialize Docker. So on my service name, so we'll add all those. So let me just say Docker Compose app, and then I'll run it as that. So let me see. Yeah, so in here some couple of mistakes that we want to correct, like this one. We'll see this one is Docker Compose dot YAML. I think I was right, just some little bit of, yeah, I just say Docker that, and then you can say the version of Docker that you want to run is 3. You can even say 3. Put some, maybe a version that you know exists, and I'll do something like this is the image that I want to use, and then I'll say port is this. Then you can add a number of stuff, but let's first try this and see what is happening. So Docker option command, let me see what is happening. Yeah, so sorry, here I have a big typo, so I'll just say Docker Compose is not Docker Composer, sorry for that. So you just say Docker Compose and then you run it. So this one should spin up the container, and if you want to know which even in your container, maybe you want to set stuff like the container name, you can still add it under the description here. You can say after the image or before the image, you can just say I need to call my container to have a name of, let's say YouTube Rabbit tutorial. So I'll say that. Also, there are items that we didn't set, for example things like maybe, so you're seeing it's spinning up and Docker container created and started. So you can actually check our we can actually check here to see if the container was started successfully. Let me see. Yeah, so here we go. Yeah, so here it is. So RabbitMQ1 blah blah blah, but because we wanna easily identify it, we'll just say YouTube tutorial Rabbit to give us a nice name. And then one thing that I forgot, you can also set up, because you don't want your Rabbit to be accessible by anyone, so you probably need to set the environment. So you can just set something like RabbitMQ default user, something like that one, and then you say this one, I'll say full stack forger, I'll say YouTube, for example, and then yeah, so this is default, should be this way, and then I can add one more property here. I'll say default password, so I'll just say default pass, and then I'll say to change 1 2 3. Yeah, so those at least have set my environment to be a bit safe, because if this one, for example, we log in into this one, I think we should be able to just access it without any restriction. So here we go. So you'll see we can just view these queue of ours and then log in without any, or rather using the default logins. But that's not what I want. So what I want is to run this particular container with a name, and then I'll need to put some password and username. So that's why I'm doing the two. So I'll save it and then try again. Docker Compose up, and that one will spin it up again. Let me see now what you're having. So we are having YouTube Rabbit something. So if I make this one bigger, you will notice that now we are having Rabbit setup YouTube tutorial. So I'll put all these I'll put them in the description, all these links to these compose to these files, like the Docker Compose file, so that you can access it. So let's try to access our RabbitMQ. The user was YouTube and the password was to change something. Let me just grab it. So I'll say to change 1 2 3, and then if I log in and save that password, you'll see now I'm able to access a very nice UI for the admin dashboard. So congrats up to that. So we already now have our RabbitMQ well set up and running. So I'll go through the various items and the items that we are having. So that's the first step. The second step is now to create an exchange and to create a queue of the same. So I'll just go here into the exchanges. So this is where you create an exchange from here. So you just say, for example, I need an exchange to be called maybe full stack forge exchange, for forge exchange. And then this one now will be our exchange. So here, this is what I was telling you about. You can say these are direct exchanges. So this one will just be queuing, or rather channeling the messages to one particular queue, and then fan out will be broadcasting them to all the queues. And then headers, now you can set different headers, and then topic queues will be pulling from this topic depending on now what you had in your wildcard. So for now, I'll start by the first one. Let's just create a direct exchange, and then you can set if it's auto delete, yes or no. So this one will mean if it's not auto delete, it will wait for the acknowledgement, and then you can put some arguments around your exchange at the same time. That's it. Boom. Now you add the exchange. So once we add the exchange, let me say full stack forge exchange. You can even say like that, or use an hyphen and say maybe this is an exchange. And then once now you have this in here, you can now create the exchange. So out of that, yes, so if you search it in here, you'll find that here is your exchange. But right now we haven't bound any queue to this exchange, so this exchange doesn't have any bindings which you'll need to bind. So it's just an empty exchange. Let's go next to. So all these also you can do them via the Spring Boot producer. So you can actually set them up in the producer service that you bind. You set the exchange and queues, and then you bind them together. Yeah, so out of that we'll create a queue. So let's say we wanna create a queue now to do some orders, or rather to ship some orders to Full Stack Forge. So what we'll do is we'll just create a queue. So we can just say maybe our orders queue to Full Stack Forge. So you just come here, virtual host. Now right now, so virtual host is where we're talking about now. You can literally cluster your queues and exchanges. So right now maybe I just have the default one, and then we'll go to now the type of queue. I'll just use the classic, but you can also use quorum or stream depending on what they're delivering. This is what I explained in the theoretical class. Yeah, but now you can select just a classic queue and then put a name. Let's say orders, let's say full forge orders queue, for example. You can name it wherever you want, with either underscore, with dot, whichever way that you want. Then also you see here we can now have a durability. You can say it's a transient which just comes and disappear, or maybe durable queue which in case it's not acknowledged or is not consumed, it will still remain in the queue. And then here we'll have an auto delete. You can also set some stuff. So you see all these are capabilities that RabbitMQ usually gives us, which I talked in the previous tutorial. So you have auto. So if to add something like, for example, message time to leave, if you just tap on it, it will give you that key, and then you just say maybe I need it to this, maybe 200 milliseconds and stuff like that, or whatever. So all these you can set your version, maximum priority, maximum length, maximum byte, all these things. So it's very flexible in terms of selecting how you want your queue to behave. So for now I'll just remain it at that, and then I'll go to now to bind these with the routing key to the exchange. Sorry. Yeah, so I'll add that queue. Let me see if my queue was created. Yes, so we have the FF orders queue created. So now this queue we want to bind it, because right now in terms of binding it doesn't have, so it's bound to the default exchange, which we said in case you don't want to create any exchange, you can just use the default, which now will require you can use to publish your queue, your messages into the queues. But this one will publish to all the queues without any binding logic or any exchange logic. So I'll go back to my exchange here, pick my exchange here, and then go to binding. So I'll say I want to bind this exchange to what? So I want to bind it to a queue. And what's my queue name? So I'll come here to grab my queue name here. So I'll just grab my queue name, then come here to exchange, click on that, and then I say bind it to queue, and then I'll put the queue name. So here, this is where now we have the routing key. For example, these, let's say these are just a foodstuff order, or maybe say these are orders to be delivered, or maybe it's a walk-in order. I'll just say these are walk-ins. If it's orders maybe related to a specific department, maybe say children's department order, stuff like that. Or maybe if I'm dealing with more in the motor industry, I can say these are motorcycles order. Motorcycles, so all the orders that are coming from motorcycles, I can say them like that. If I'm in hospital, maybe I can say this is orthopedic, or but we don't have orders in hospital. So we can say something like maybe let's use another industry, maybe say maybe it's a school, and then I want to, maybe there are orders for maybe uniforms. If you are doing internal uniform for students, let's say, so this is form 1, I can say this is form 1 order. So all the orders sent to form 1 should be processed here. Or else if it's just to put a topic or maybe a binding to your queues and say these queues will go to here. Or rather, if I'm having different system, maybe I have finance system, I have HR system and stuff like that, I can say this is a finance order. So I can actually specify here where I expect these ones to go. Yeah, so once I have that, you can also feel free to add some arguments around the same. So I'll just bind these. So I can bind this exchange to a number of queues. So you see, like right now, any message that I sent to this queue, to this exchange, with this routing key, it will automatically go to this queue. So if you go back to our queue and check, in our queue, you'll see this is the exchange bound to this particular queue. So anything that comes from this exchange and into this with this routing key, automatically it will come to our queue. Yeah, so how do we actually now get to use this queue? So in here, I'll use a Spring Boot application, as I said initially. So I'll use a Spring Boot application to demonstrate this, so whereby we'll just create a producer for our queue, and then a consumer for our queue, and then we'll publish some items onto the queue to just see what will happen. So in here, in my Spring Boot initialization page, you can also check if you want to understand more about initializing a Spring Boot app, but I'll just pick this and say here is full stack forge, and then I can just say full stack forge .academy. So in here I'll say rabbit class, rabbit lesson, yeah, and then that will be it. So it's a demo of Spring Boot. I'll say Java, I'll use YAML, and then I'll use Java 17. And then in here, so two things, because I'll probably want to create something like what I just need first is the RabbitMQ Spring dependency. So this is the RabbitMQ that I'll select. If you want for the streams, you can pick this one, but I'll just first select RabbitMQ, and then I'm used to using Longbook every now and then I'll use Spring Web, because I'll probably want to do it's not mandatory, but because I'll want to do a REST API later on. So those are all that we require. You can check out all the other dependencies that you might need in your Spring Boot app, but that's all that I'll need. So I'll generate this, and then this will generate for me a project that I can now come and use it in my full stack Forge page. So don't worry, all this code I'll finally put them on Git and then share a repo. So in here, I'll open this project in my IDE and then see what will happen. So I'll just say, I don't know if I can add this. So I'll just open this project and just say, I want to see this Rabbit lesson. So this probably will be my consumer. So I can create first my consumer, bind everything, and then so this one I'll call it consumer, and then we'll just use this to create the second one. So for now, we can I can just rename this. I can just rename this to consumer. So I'll just rename it and say this is my producer. Let's start with producer, and then I'll just also duplicate it and say I'll have consumer, but I want to proceed a bit, and then I'll copy it when you get to after we set up all the Rabbit and stuff. Then we can actually pick it and then use it now for the second lesson to just make sure we are in we go as quick as possible. Yeah, so here is my Rabbit lesson that I want to create now. So I have all these set up by Spring Boot, and I have these. So I'll just do here and say I want to do a consumer, and then I'll just, so I can just say a file. Then this file I want it to be inside the consumers package, and then I'll call it main consumer, or because you say that's orders consumer, I can say orders consumer, because our exchange is on orders. So I'll just add this here, and then I'll proceed next. So first, let me update my dependencies, and then you pick it up from there.